The Indiana Pacers and the Victor Oladipo situation is a confusing one, to say the least. About a couple weeks ago, Victor Oladipo announced that he would not be playing in the NBA's Orlando restart, and the Pacers seemed doomed for another first-round exit. This left a lot of fans unhappy. Many of them started to make fake trades, which a lot of them were really, really bad. Like, really, really just unrealistic trades. And many fans saw Victor Oladipo as one foot already out the door, having him interested in teams such as the New York Knicks or the Miami Heat. However, that all changed recently as a report that surfaced about a week ago stated that there's growing optimism that Victor Oladipo could end up playing in the NBA's Orlando restart. And well, after multiple strong practices and some quotes from Victor Oladipo himself saying that maybe he could end up playing in the restart, I think it's safe to say that he will end up playing when the season eventually resumes. Now, it's unclear as to why he had a sudden change of heart, as I don't think the rewards outweigh the risk in this situation, as he could maybe re-injure himself, maybe he could get that thing. And overall, I don't even think he will be the same player that he once was. Now, even with all these uncertainties regarding his potential return, I am confident in one thing. The Indiana Pacers' future will be decided by the outcome of this season. Now, what do I mean by that? Well, it's really all dependent on how Oladipo plays when he returns and how much winning that return to play produces. There are really only two paths the Indiana Pacers should take here, dependent on if they win or if they lose. Now, obviously this has to do a lot with how Victor Oladipo plays, but also it has a lot to do with where they end up in the seeding. Right now, the Pacers are slated at 5th in the Eastern Conference, and if the season ended today, they would have to face the Miami Heat in a first-round matchup. Now, I think they could end up beating the Heat. It'd definitely be a very competitive series, but the Heat are not an unbeatable team. They obviously have Jimmy Butler as their all-star type player, but their roster is pretty balanced out for the most part, very similar to the Indiana Pacers roster. And I think they have the potential to beat a team like the Heat. And let's just say the Pacers somehow slip to the 6th seed and have to play a team such as the Celtics or the Raptors. I believe if the Indiana Pacers are firing on all cylinders and are fully loaded with their health and their talent, I think that they could even push a team as the ones that I mentioned before. I mean, if you got your players firing all cylinders like Victor Oladipo, Malcolm Brogdon, Domantas Sabonis, Miles Turner, I mean, I think that you can compete with the likes of Jason Tatum, Kemba Walker, or Pascal Siakam, Kyle Lowry, those teams. I'm not going to say that they would have the edge, and it might be pretty unlikely that they would beat those teams, but I believe, again, if the Pacers are firing on all cylinders, they could be able to shock one of those two teams and somehow make a conference finals appearance. And if the Pacers were somehow able to make it to the conference finals, I do think this is where their run would end, as they just probably couldn't compete with the likes of Giannis and the Bucks. The Bucks have way too much shooting, way too much defense, and of course the reigning MVP himself, Giannis Antetokounmpo. So I have the Pacers' approximate ceiling for this season as an Eastern Conference Finals appearance, but probably nothing more than that, even if they were firing at all cylinders. Now, is this enough to justify giving Victor Oladipo the max and swinging a big trade or two to try and go all in for next season? I'm not really sure. That's up to management, but still, it would be improvement over the last half decade or so. So let's just say the Pacers somehow do make the conference finals or even the finals. This would probably lead me to path number one, which is you go all in with Victor Oladipo. You give him the max, banking on the fact that he's going to be the same player he once was in that 2017-2018 season, an elite two-way scorer, all-star type player. Then you would swing a couple trades, maybe acquire a scoring 3 or 4. You trade Miles Turner in the process to commit to the small ball lineup and completely maximize your offensive potential, or potentially trade for a disgruntled star and try and make a star duo with Victor Oladipo. And hopefully this roster would develop and maximize its potential and win you a championship or two a couple years down the line. Unfortunately for the Pacers, I just don't see this as a realistic option, as Victor Oladipo's major quad injury definitely set him back in terms of his athleticism and his ability to drive to the basket. There's no guarantee that he will ever be the player he once was during that 2017-2018 season. And also, there's no guarantee that you're going to acquire enough talent and maybe even a star, as Indiana has had the track record of not being able to attract free agents and stars because they are a small market and they do not have the funds to acquire such players. And this leads me to path number 2, which is unfortunately a much sadder ending for Pacers fans alike. So let's just say the Pacers, fully loaded with their roster, end up losing in the first round. If you're Kevin Pritchard, you have to start to think to yourself, well, we haven't seen any real improvement for the past 3 years, even with all the changes we made to our roster. And Victor Oladipo's contract would be expiring after the 2020-21 season. It almost seems eerie how similar of a situation this is to one that the Pacers were in not too long ago. Let's take a moment and rewind. The date is June 18th. The Indiana Pacers have just come off their second straight first-round exit. One at the hands of the Toronto Raptors in 7 in the previous year, and the other to the eventual champion Cleveland Cavaliers and King James. Paul George in previous days had just stated that he would love to stay in Indiana as he saw it as his forever home, and said that the Pacers were his group and were a couple pieces away from competing for a championship. Well, fast forward to this date, and Paul George has now requested a trade from the Indiana Pacers. This blindsides the organization and the fans, and the Pacers now have to scramble to get something in return for their disgruntled all-star. They end up settling on a package of Victor Oladipo and Domantas Sabonis, which at the time seemed like a ripoff, but now the trade seems pretty even for both parties that were involved. Anyways, where am I going with this? Well, it's not hard to see the similarities between those two players' situations during their tenures on the Pacers. Both Paul George and Victor Oladipo suffered multiple first-round exits, with their roster getting minimal improvement and not a lot of success being shown. Now, I will say that Victor Oladipo has had way more to work with and way better roster construction than Paul George ever did. But in the end, both would never see any success and never even getting past the first round. It wouldn't be hard to see that Victor Oladipo could become disgruntled, such as Paul George was, if he were to suffer another first-round exit, as he already has a reported rift with the team due to his management of his injury and workload, and as well as them lowballing him in contract extension offers. So if you're the Pacers, obviously you don't want to lose Oladipo for nothing, so I believe in this path, or path 2, you have no other choice but to trade him, whether that be for a young scoring wing. There's some potential options on the market, or you trade him for a high draft pick to a team that's looking to compete in the near future. Either way, if you are going to trade Oladipo, you need to at least try and maximize his value, because I understand that it's going to be hard for teams to try and commit to 1 year old Oladipo, especially if they don't know if he's going to re-sign or be the same player he once was. So that may kind of scramble with what kind of return they can get, but I believe it's better to trade him sooner rather than later and get more assets out of it. So anyways, that's pretty much it for the video. I'm not really sure what path the Pacers should end up taking. Again, I think they should base it off the results of this season, whether that be they make a decent run or they get eliminated early. I mean, it really should depend on this season how they go about their future. Let me know what you guys think in the comments below, and tell me, if I did pretty well or not. Tell me what I need to work on. And if you enjoyed it, drop a like and hit the sub button. And appreciate you watching, and I'll see y'all in the next one. Thank you.